Hello stranger, and welcome to my series on urban legends. Today I'm going to be talking about black-eyed children. Black-eyed children are supernatural humanoid creature type things, kind of like cryptids, kind of an urban legend, and a little bit supernatural creature with one defining feature. They have pure black eyes. No two sightings of black-eyed children are the same, but there are some similarities. For one, they usually come in pairs with an older girl and a young boy between the age ranges of about 7-8 up to 16-17. They tend to be pale and gaunt, with strange clothing that is either timeless or old-fashioned, and they appear at night or twilight. As with most urban legends, their origins are uncertain. Some say that they've been around since the 1980s, while others say that they come from an article in 1996 by Brian Bethel, a reporter from Texas. However, there's a theory that these children aren't new creatures so much as old creatures that we already know about, like demons or vampires, or maybe even aliens, and that's why they sound so inhuman or alien. So now I'm going to read you a couple of stories from Thought Catalogue of encounters that people have had with black-eyed children. And the first one is actually the first story I ever read about black-eyed children. So it's the one that I think about when I think about their behaviour, how creepy they are. This first story is called Midnight Caller. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog, Lucy, barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything: our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her there was nothing there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work with a puppy. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped towards me, and when I touched the metal she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was being afraid and backing down. As her mannerisms changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were 2 kids. She was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21 and she looked about 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-covered pullover-style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around 3 or 4, in the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair, tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs. They were black, or midnight blue, or a dark, dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members, eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalise my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently I backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step the tone changed. At first she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door and I inched backward, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back toward the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up the window, locked the door, and sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them that black-eyed children can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it. But this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of the knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. The idea that black-eyed kids can't come in without being invited is one of the reasons people think that they might be demons or vampires. This next story is called "You Must Let Me In." On March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I had never heard of anything having to do with black-eyed kids. I was 12. I was sitting outside a hairdresser's in an old Chevy pickup, waiting for my mum to get her hair cut. About 15 minutes had passed and I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk. At first I thought I recognised him from school, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. But it wasn't anyone I knew. At this point I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to my side of the car and just stared. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes. To freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have never seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I locked the car doors and ducked down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later he was gone. When my mother got to the car, she told me that a boy with black eyes had come to the hairdresser's and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God. So, what do you think? Would you let them in? Would you like to encounter them? If you're home late at night and the black-eyed children came knocking, would you open the door? I definitely wouldn't. And I don't know, if you've had an encounter with black-eyed children, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If you would like to see more of my urban legend series, then subscribe. If you like this video, then like it. Thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.